I rise today to speak about President Obama's plan to move Guantanamo Bay terrorists to the United States. However, it is not much of a plan, with all due respect. It is more of a failed attempt to fulfill a campaign promise, and in my view, what he believes will secure his legacy. And fortunately for us, those who believe moving dangerous enemy combatants within our communities is dangerous, irresponsible, and an illogical idea, the President's plan contains really nothing substantive. In fact, it fails to recommend an alternative to any location, to any current facility at all. Matter of fact, I call that a win. The plan does not provide any intelligence to substantiate the President's claims, nor does it even provide a chart or a graph to support the mathematics on the alleged cost savings. And there is no estimate regarding the cost to local and state governments to support such a move. Indeed, the 9-page report is short in every regard. The White House received the Department of Defense's results of their site surveys and other data regarding potential closing last month. And what this, and I'm holding up the report here, this is all we have in return. 9 pages, probably about 10 point, maybe less, single-spaced. This is what we have in return. I know the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, my good friend, colleague, Senator John McCain, is not going to be pleased with the lack of substance or data or the articulation of a real plan. And the same goes for Senator Richard Burr, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, who at this particular time is going to be doing or introducing legislation of his own to provide intelligence with regards to the administration's lack of intelligence on moving detainees to the United States. Mr. President, the lack of a plan and the inability of this administration to provide a site alternative indicate that none of the sites visited by DoD survey team met the demands necessary to hold detainees and, more important, keep our communities safe. The fact that no site was named, no substance on those visits provided, tell me there is no alternative to match what we are now doing safely and securely at GITMO, period. This so-called plan, as outlined by the President in his speech today from the White House, skims over 4 steps to closing Guantanamo Bay. First, it articulates the administration's plan to continue moving detainees designated for transfer by the President's national security team to foreign countries. In some instances, this may have been successful, but with regard to individuals being rehabilitated, but a third of the time, detainees transferred to third-party host countries have returned to the battlefield. And these are just the ones that we know about. Surely that percentage would increase. This is called recidivism, and the rates are too high for this process to be called secure and responsible, as the administration has labeled it. Second, the administration plans to continue its review of the threat posed by those detainees who are not currently eligible for transfer through the Periodic Review Board. This is to provide a new review on the current population of detainees who have been deemed too dangerous to transfer. Deemed too dangerous for transfer. And yet this President wants to give them a second shot at getting out. Mr. President, this doesn't make any sense. Terrorists are not criminals. As much as this President would like for you to believe, terrorists are not equal to the inmates we have across America's prison system. They are fixated on the destruction of America. They have no regard for life, not that of their own, and especially not the lives of innocent civilians. The report hones in on having a detainee population anywhere from 30 to 60. There seems to be an assumption on the part of the President that the review board will determine half of those deemed too dangerous for transfer or release are suddenly safe for transfer or release. Does the President believe this is possible Or does this assumption simply serve his own means to create cost savings for his plan that can never be realized? The plan also fails to account for the fact that our nation is still mired in the war on terrorism. We're still fighting in the Middle East and worldwide, including the United States of America, to ensure terrorism does not prevail. But what about the individuals we detain from this day forward? What about those individuals with critical information related to the next terrorist threat? How can we operate a facility like Guantanamo Bay to hold terrorists we take off of the battlefield? Third, the plan attempts to identify individual dispositions, one by one, for those who remain designated for continued law of war detention, to include Article 3 military commissions or foreign prosecutions. What a muddle. In his remarks today, President Obama advocated for trying terror suspects in Article 3 courts. The president named 2 American citizens, Faisal Shahzad and Zakar Sarnoff. To articulate his point, both of these individuals, however, were apprehended in the United States, not on the battlefield. The intent of the Guantanamo detention facility is to protect the American people by removing terrorists from the battlefield. As the United States faces a growing terrorist threat from organizations like ISIS, which have tens of thousands of members, bringing those terrorists to the United States to stand trial simply cannot be the answer. It is not safe for the American people and irresponsible to our national security. Fourth part of the plan. The plan states the administration's desire to work with Congress to lift unnecessary prohibitions in the law. That's in quotes. Work with Congress. Well, there's something that's unique for the president. Work with Congress to lift unnecessary prohibitions in current law. But it does not anywhere in its 9 pages endorse a specific facility to house Guantanamo detainees. Rather, the plan describes a prototype for a detention facility in the United States. Not Kansas, not Colorado, not South Carolina, not anywhere in the United States. The president's long-awaited plan is to work with Congress to identify the most appropriate location as soon as possible, according to the summary provided by the Department of Defense to my office. Question: how could it take 7 years to arrive at the idea to work with the Congress? What a novel idea, but only for this express purpose. If the president had a suitable alternative, he would have provided it in this plan. If he had a suitable alternative, he would have provided it in 1990 when we stopped this plan. Further, the plan fails to substantiate President Obama's repeated claims that Guantanamo Bay serves as a recruiting tool for jihadists. Let me repeat this. The plan fails to substantiate President Obama's repeated claims that the Guantanamo Bay serves as a recruiting tool for jihadists, a rallying point for terrorist attacks, hindering relations with allies, draining the Department of Defense resources. My goodness. I wrote Defense Secretary Ash Carter, done so in the past with previous secretaries in November, to ask for intelligence reports or data to support many of these assertions. I asked Secretary Carter if an intelligence assessment has been done in conjunction with the site surveys recently conducted by the Department of Defense. From the safety of our community's standpoint, I asked for the department's rationale for evaluating Fort Leavenworth when 3 previous evaluations have made it abundantly clear it is and continues to be an unacceptable alternative. I asked if there were intelligence products regarding previous site evaluations at Fort Leavenworth. The administration has argued that Guantanamo is a recruiting tool for terrorists. So I logically asked for an intelligence assessment to support that argument. As a follow-on, I asked what assessment had been done to reflect that Guantanamo has increased terrorist recruitment. Finally, Mr. President, was there any empirical data to support the administration's argument that national security threats will decrease if enemy combatants are held in the United States, and common sense will tell you that it would increase. 2 months later, the response confirmed my assumptions. The Department of Defense had no intelligence products, none. No intelligence products, no data to provide to support the President's argument that GITMO serves as a recruiting tool and that moving detainees to the mainland would increase security and decrease the terrorist threat to the United States and all the other claims. My colleagues, this plan really confirms what many of us already know. There is no safe alternative to GITMO. Not in Kansas, not in Colorado, not in South Carolina, nowhere on the mainland is there a secure and responsible alternative. If there were, this president would not have failed to articulate it in his plan. Mr. President, a plan that is a legacy speech does not safeguard the lives of the American people. I yield the floor.